to have on our level. Like, we always talk and trying to get people to understand us. And I'm learning that through self-reflection is when I'm enlightened the most, and learning that everybody's my teacher. And I want to spread that to other people. I want to spread that peace and that love, a lot like how you guys are. But my question now that I was sitting in the audience was, yoga has become this mass-produced thing. And now I'm sitting here starting to question whether or not I want to be on be a part of that vehicle to bring it to the masses. So my question to you guys is, how do you feel about yoga and what it can do for our people? Because now it's being like mass produced, and now I don't like mass production. That's when it starts to be controlled.
Well, if the young brothers want to speak about that, I could answer. I don't want to monopolize the stage, but
well, I'm actually married to a master yogi who invented her own yoga system. Sorry, I'm married to a sister who is a master yogi, and I watched her journey from when she first started doing it, because it actually happened out of a need of necessity. She had a congenital knee affliction because she was born on a military base called Camp Lejeune, and it was found that everybody except her that was born there died based upon the radioactive stuff that they put into the water. Because all military installations, whether we understand it or not, and when I say military installations, I'm not just talking about I'm talking about schools, I'm talking about colleges, I'm talking about everything, hospitals, all of that. All of that is under military jurisdiction. So she, in order for her to walk, basically engaged it as a means to actually heal herself. And because the knee is a manifestation of the, like, different body parts have different associations. So the knees tend to be connected to the subconscious. And so within that, watching her over the years actually build it up to the point where she developed her own system, I watched her deal with all of the stuff that you're talking about in terms of the political aspect of whether it's hot yoga, Bikram yoga, chicken nugget yoga. I'm serious. There's chicken nugget yoga. If you don't think I'm playing, like, look it up. Yeah, look it up. This is, you know, these people take everything and make it into something else. So regardless, in watching that transition and watching her, in a sense, strive to actually stay pure in her relationship with her body, and specifically the breath, as the great brother Dr. Valentine told us, that the breath, or the holy breath, is that which distinguishes us and is ours specifically. You know, what they call the et tu spiritu santi, right? So that aspect of it has nothing to do with what Bikram or heated yoga or hatha yoga or Ashtanga yoga or whatever type of yoga it is. The true yogi is one who realizes that he or she herself is the actual conduit for the breath itself. So your body is doing the yoga, but what is happening is your body is putting yourself in a position to breathe out and to expand what the breath is, because you're using muscles and certain things that nobody else uses. So to take that away from you and to make you think that it's a strictly Hindu practice or whatever, they've created a mass market to dilute the aspect of it, to make you doubt the fact that you can generate your own heat to do that. You don't need to go to nobody else to do that. Your yoga is not predicated, or what you want to do is not predicated on this reality giving you the permission to do so. You have given the reality the permission to influence you. Therefore, our biggest issue, or two of the biggest issues I find our people dealing with, is apathy, laziness, and self-doubt. So if you can understand that these things are all physical manifestations that don't exist anywhere else but here, you can rise above whatever preconceived notion it is. If you want to be a yogi, be the yogi. And don't predicate it on what anybody else's yoga is. Learn the system, and then put yourself in a position to be the master in it that you already are. Before you thought about doing yoga, before you did the yoga, you thought about doing the yoga, right? So that means you did the yoga already. Now what happens is you have to catch your physical body up to the point in which that is happening, because it's already done. Islam?
right, so good evening. Thank y'all very much. I appreciate y'all coming out. Amazing. So I've had this question on my mind for a number of years already. If we're dealing with our physical reality being, correct me if I'm wrong, projections or manifestations of the darker side of the subconscious mind, and all of these realities are existing at once, how can that be true for a child who may be going through abuse, or children who are victims of wars across the planet? I'm just having difficulty connecting the dot between, a child is not, it can't be on the child's subconscious mind that they want to exist in a miserable reality.
Child was also a grown up before. We need to stop thinking we own children. They came here to have that experience. Me and my sister who's here had a rough one, but it's our choice. It figures out the equation that has me sitting here today. So it's choices. This world is not real. You just heard a whole lecture about this as a simulation, the illusion, the matrix. The experience is what gets us to this destination where we're trying to go. And your human mind may not even understand why you chose it. But ultimately, these children are making choices. We don't own them, we don't control them. So that war-torn kid, that abused kid, I know from our moral and our heart and all these things, it's like, wow, how could we be in a world like this? And this is just so vicious. But ultimately, it's a choice they made. We need to start seeing ourselves in control.
Before they came here.
Before they got here. They said they picked their parents. You think you just somebody can? I thought you were God. So your parents just said you like, fuck it, here I am again.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm born to her womb. You chose that womb, and you chose the dysfunction too. We need to understand we're in control at all times. We have to change our perspective to the perspective of now. Remember the oracle in the Matrix. You already made the choice. Right. You are now trying to figure out why you're doing it. So same thing. I know it looks rough, but we're thinking of rough. What if that's my kids? The Trayvon could have been my son. That was all mind control to put fear. Nobody cared about Trayvon. You all thought it might have been your son. It could have happened to me. And that's what. Then when Obama said it, it could have been me. That was the ritual to subconsciously put you in the visualization of your kids. And since you hold ownership over them, you're the custodian of them. And if they chose you, of course, you teach them your system of your ideas of this and that. But ultimately, it's their path. Because if you could do something to get my son out the fucking basement, you know what I'm saying? If you got that much control, shit, you need to move in and just be his life coach.
Got you. Thank you.
All right, brother.
Very quickly, very good, very good. Remember, there are also actually genetic consciousness streams. And there are genetic consciousness streams within the envelope of this consciousness reality. There are consciousness streams that we follow based upon our intentions. All things are based on divine intention. So what are your intentions for the next life? You are in school right now. So are you going to be gone or graduate, or are you going to be a super senior? It's up to you. Yes, brother.
Islam, peace to all three on the panel, and peace to all who came to attend. Forgive me if I'm nervous, but I'm glad to be in your presence. I'm a secured party creditor, declaring my appellation name with the UCC and a non-UC filing, living, collapsing, and controlling the trust. Our brothers are in these Albion dark magic courts, and your last question kind of segues into what I'm doing now, which trying to crush the courts and the dark magic with the Magi's in all these administrative venues. Has any one of you have made an effort to integrate the metaphysics of Phil Valentine with what you're doing at Aseer in crushing him with paperwork, as also coaching and navigating through these systems and controlling our vessel, because we're forced and compelled through the birth certificate theft of the Sesame Trust and the Mortmain Act, as well as the various collapsing of the federal debt and HR 192. I can go on and on. But is there any type of manifestation or integration of the metaphysics so we can have Noble Drew Ali, his declaration of the 10-10-59 in Cook County, integrated in the paperwork so we can get all our brothers and sisters out of these crooked, false, magic
Not everybody.
administrations, though.
Not everyone, brother. If I may, real quickly. Overstand and understand that the UCC was actually put in because that was an alternative to natural law. It was placed there in order to do business. We became commodities. Human beings became commodities. So we had to act as functionaries within that system. Trump just signed a bill that's going to bring us back onto the gold standard.
Right.
Y'all hate him, but that fool is doing what he's supposed to be doing.
Right.
Nobody can deal with a $163 trillion debt anymore. So the bankers had to make a deal. They went with the cryptocurrencies, and we're going back on the gold standard because of BRICS. So what I'll say to you is the UCC 1 and the UCC non-UCC are going to be obsolete soon. And you're going to go back to natural law. That means the autochthonous indigenous now will rule the land.
That's right.
But it's a matter of us now becoming we have to grow our maturity. We have been stultified. We went through a series of 400 years of arrested development. And during that time, our true status and identity as the indigenous blood people of this land here were taken from us and assigned to this denizen. So, as my distinguished panel guests know, you essentially are going to have to stand on your square and pronounce that, getting rid of all of your entitlements. But even though you use them, maintain your status as a diplomat only walking upon the land. Never do business on the ocean with them. Never. Always come back on the land and make sure that before you even think about going to court, you file that paperwork stating that I don't do business in that court. And if you're forced in that court, force them to remove that banner, that flag that gives them the authority. It is us to learn, but we don't have the schools. We don't control our children's minds. These are the schools that they need to be attending. We are actually establishing a foundation for you to take your children out of school and teach them how to become H-U-E, men, beings.
I would just add on to that, to say that paperwork, paper come from trees. So in the end, we're really talking about an integration of something natural turned into a flat surface, right? In which now people are trying to diametrically put themselves onto it. But that's what they did to you. Quick story. I was getting beat up in court. I maybe told it before, long time ago, taken to court for things or whatever. And I was in the process of that for maybe 5 years. By the first 2 years, I was getting beat up. By the third year, I realized that this whole thing is not even real. Like, as real as it was, what made it real was my intention in it. And my intention in it was to stop them from attacking me and taking what I felt was mine. But once I realized that they could not take anything from me that I did not give them, then it became a different flow. And so I started to understand that the paperwork is really just a vehicle that really had nothing to even do with what's on the paper. I started to get like the Seal of Solomon, because I realized that a lot of people that's processing this paperwork is Ashkenazim Jews. So if that's the case, then they're part of the B'nai B'rith, and then from there they're part of the other so-called orders that they deal with. And when I realized that, I said, well, there's binding sigils that our ancestors created that I could use as watermarks on my paperwork. I'm going to start using that. Then I started saying, well, you know what? If that's the case in that work, then why don't I start doing other things and really going in there in my proper self? So I started at the time, if y'all remember, I used to wear a lot of feathers in my hair when I was growing it out. So one day I went with all black raven feathers, right? And I had on a whole, like, you know when the mobsters wear the black trench coat over their right? So I went in there with that, with the medals and all of that. I went in there, put a little obelisk on the desk, gave him my paperwork, and every time the judge spoke, I spinned it. What started to happen was he started stuttering, he started drooling, the computer started to malfunction, right? And then the next time I went to court, the court was packed just like this, but it was just for me. So then I started to realize, oh, they're sending the boys in. So let's really take it up, because now I want to see what I can do. Because now I realize that the magic is really me, that these people is trying to take something from me that they could never control. So it got to the point, to make a long story shorter, it got to the point that I created what was called a letter of rogatory, based on a right of avizandum. This is where moral science comes in, because true moral science is the study of self. And what Noble Joe Ali basically brought, he was the first one talking us that we was already here. And in the process of realizing that, I started to actualize the actual paperwork and started to reduce all the statutory language and just started to speak in what they call the King's English, which is the language that our ancestors spoke here. So when they would ask me questions, so one time the judge asked me a question and I just responded to him in Latin. I said, "Qui cumalio contrahit vel es vel ebe debit non ignoros contradictos ellos," which means he who enters into a contract either has to be aware or ought not be aware of the origin of the contract. Once I did that, brothers and sisters, and gave them the paperwork and hit it with that letter of rogatory that basically let them know, I know the jig is up, I'm the judge, I'm the magi, and I expect you to release this bond to me by the next joint, or I'm going to put a whole lien on the building. When I went to the court the next time, they chained the door. They called my name, went to the door, the door was changed. I had to sneak into the court behind. Then when I got into the court, the judge wasn't even on the bench. He didn't even show up. They sent a little old white lady, little clerk lady out in the back and asked what I wanted to do. I said, well, this is dismissed. Pointed down on the ring. I said, it's dismissed. And because he didn't show up and do what he's supposed to do, I'm going to follow through with the action. Follow through with the action. 3 months after that, went back down to the court building closed. Right here, 284 Adams Street. Look it up. I went in there, the court building closed. They said they had to close it for rats. And then they moved it across the street to the new fabricated building they built up in the process of all of this happening. So I still hold the lien on that. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm trying to say I did this with no UCC, with no statutory language, with no preconceived notion other than what I manifested out of myself to do so. And from that point, that's when I realized the way out is the way in. You know what Joe Ali said, I'm going to leave this European around long enough to show you how to run a government. And so that's what we did. And we have been working to establish that since for a while, and it's been working. And the more we're doing ourselves, the more it's the total opposite. So I appreciate what you're saying, brother, but like our illustrious doctor told us, eventually none of that stuff going to matter. How are you able to articulate all of what you said without saying it like that? That's the question.